The glass hit the edge of the table and tipped, spilling cold water across my lap. I stared at it, frozen, the droplets soaking through my cotton dress, clinging to my skin like the words she'd just thrown at me. "You don't belong in this house." "You never did," Evelyn Hayes said with quiet precision. "Leave, you lowlife." Brandon didn't move. He kept cutting his scrambled eggs like none of it was happening, like his mother hadn't just humiliated me in our kitchen. I looked at him, searching for a flicker of support, a glance, anything. But he wouldn't meet my eyes. I stood, slowly, as the silence in the room thickened. My hands trembled, but my voice didn't break. "Okay," I said, barely above a whisper. "Then I'll go." And I did. But here's the part she never expected. When I walked out of that house, I took with me more than a suitcase and my pride. I took her electricity bill, her Wi-Fi, her groceries. The lease renewal she didn't know was in my name. I took the quiet $75 million empire I had built from my laptop, right under her nose. The same laptop she called my toy. The same one that had been paying their mortgage, their credit cards, their life. But let me rewind. I was born in El Paso, Texas, in a one-bedroom apartment that always smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and leftover bacon grease. My mother, Rosa Santiago, was the kind of woman whose hands were always cracked from scrubbing things clean. She worked double shifts at a small diner off Mesa Street, pouring coffee for tired truckers and lonely old men who called her Mija like she was their own. We never had much, but somehow we never felt empty. At night, when she got home smelling of coffee and fryer oil, she'd drop her purse, kick off her shoes, and pull out a stack of borrowed library books. She'd read to me about Paris, about Machu Picchu, about oceans and ice fields and faraway cities I couldn't even pronounce. "The world's bigger than El Paso, Noelle," she'd whisper, tucking the blanket around me. "And you belong in all of it." She skipped meals so I could have enough, walked miles so I wouldn't miss a school field trip, pointed at the mariachi dancers during community festivals and said, "Look how alive they are. That's culture, Mija. That's joy." I remember watching her feet move under the plastic chairs, tapping in rhythm with the drums, even though she looked like she could fall over from exhaustion. Her love was the only safety net I ever knew. In high school, I met Marisol Rivera, a girl whose family had come from Chihuahua. We bonded over cheap cafeteria tacos and the fact that neither of us ever had weekend plans. She taught me Spanish slang, helped me roll my R's, laughed when I said "Vamos al mundo" instead of "Vamos a viajar por el mundo." But I kept trying, and she kept cheering. That kind of friendship plants roots deep. By sophomore year, I was fluent enough to talk with her parents. And by senior year, I was tutoring younger kids in Spanish to earn gas money. I was good at it. I didn't realize then how rare that would be. College? That was never in the cards. Not because I wasn't smart, but because I saw the way Mom winced when she opened the utility bill. I saw her shoes split at the sides. Her eyes lingered too long on clearance racks. I couldn't stomach the idea of borrowing tens of thousands to sit in a classroom while she cleaned floors at midnight. When I told her I wasn't applying anywhere, she cried. "Education is your way out, Mija," she whispered. I remember cupping her face and saying, "I am your way out." It wasn't easy. I stayed up nights questioning myself, wondering if I was just scared or stupid or both. But the fire in my chest said, "You can do this. Just keep moving." I applied for every job that didn't require a degree. Eventually, I landed one at a small travel agency on the east side of town. They needed someone bilingual to help with Spanish-speaking clients. I had no experience, but I had heart. I had hustle. The first time I booked a family's trip to Costa Rica, translating each detail with care, I saw the joy on their faces and thought, "This is it. This is how I'll bring the world to others. This is how I'll bring it to Mom." I worked long hours, paid attention, learned every trick, watched how my boss negotiated rates, how she handled difficult customers, how she upsold upgrades like a magician. I soaked it in like a sponge. No one saw it yet, Not even me, but something was starting to grow. Quietly, beneath the surface, it wasn't glamorous at first. My desk was wedged between a flickering vending machine and a file cabinet that always stuck. But I didn't care. I was booking honeymoons, family vacations, quinceañera cruises, transporting people to places my mother and I used to only dream about. Within a year, I was managing entire itineraries by myself. Then I pitched an idea, an online platform to automate custom travel plans for bilingual clients. My boss was skeptical, but I built the first version on weekends. When she saw it working, she gave me full control. That changed everything. I started freelancing on the side. Word spread. Spanish-speaking clients loved that I spoke their language and understood their culture. I built a network. Guides in Costa Rica, hoteliers in Barcelona, translators in Tokyo. My email list grew. So did the platform. And me? I was still living in a 2-bedroom with my mom, eating rice and beans, stacking every spare dollar. Until one day at 26, I walked into the Santa Barbara Grand Resort for a client pitch and met the man who had turned my world upside down. Brandon Hayes. He wore a fitted navy suit and had a concierge badge pinned to his chest, but there was nothing stiff about him. His smile was easy, warm, familiar. He brought me coffee before my meeting, then leaned in and said in flawless Spanish, "Café con leche for the lady." I blinked. Solo negro. "Gracias," I replied, trying to sound unimpressed. But I smiled. He caught it. Over the next 3 days of client meetings, Brandon kept showing up at the lobby bar, by the elevators, once even outside the spa where I was meeting a bride. He didn't push, just appeared, offering jokes, asking questions, saying things like, "Ever think about staying in one place long enough to be missed?" By the end of the week, he walked me to my rental car and said, "You're different, Noelle. Most people talk about where they've been. You talk about where you're going." Something in my chest shifted. We started talking daily, then visiting each other. He'd meet me in San Diego between his shifts or fly to El Paso on his weekends off. He told me about his father, who died when he was 15, and how he'd promised to take care of his mom ever since. She had this whole life before. Parties, travel, a country club membership, he said. When Dad passed, it all stopped. Now it's just me. I listened. I understood loyalty. I lived it. And when he asked me to move in with him and his mother in Santa Barbara so we could save money and be closer, I said yes. Even when my stomach twisted. Even when my mother hesitated. "Be careful, Mija," she warned over the phone. "Loving someone is not the same as being responsible for their family." "I can handle it," I said. I believed that. The house was beautiful, if a little too perfect. Ivory curtains, glass vases, framed golf course landscapes. It smelled like lavender and lemon wax and silence. A silence you didn't dare disturb. Evelyn Hayes, Brandon's mother, met me in the parlor, sitting erect on a velvet chair like a judge awaiting a confession. Her hair was silver and sculpted tight, her blazer sharp enough to draw blood. She extended her hand without standing. "You must be Noelle." "I am. It's so nice to finally meet you, Mrs. Hayes." She looked me over. "Call me Evelyn." Then, "Where did you go to college?" I froze just a beat too long. I didn't attend. I started working after high school. Her lips thinned. How practical. There it was, the crack in the porcelain. Brandon didn't notice, or pretended not to. He just wrapped his arm around me and said, "Noelle runs a travel business. Super successful. She's brilliant." I smiled, but Evelyn didn't. Later that week, when I moved in, I found a note taped to the fridge. No shoes in the house. Floors must be cleaned every morning. Crystal is off limits. Evelyn. I laughed, at first. Then came the whispered instructions. The frowns when I added too much pepper. The way she always seemed to need something when I had a Zoom call. And the way Brandon brushed it off. "She's old-fashioned," he said. "You know, set in her ways." I told myself I could adapt. that I was a guest in her world, and she'd warm up eventually. But I didn't know then that I was already being measured, that my worth was being calculated not in love or effort or contribution, but in pedigree, in degrees, in usefulness to her agenda. And in her eyes, I was coming up short. Living with Evelyn was like waking up every day to a test I hadn't studied for. There was always something wrong. The way I folded towels, the brand of olive oil I bought, the music I played while working. She'd appear in doorways like a shadow, arms crossed, asking questions that weren't really questions. You work from your laptop, right? So you have time to vacuum before noon. I'd nod, smile, try to breathe. Of course. But not too loud. I'm watching my shows. Then she'd vanish, leaving the scent of expensive perfume and the chill of being watched. At first, I adjusted. I cleaned around her schedule. I kept calls on mute. I cooked meals without garlic because it lingers too long. I reorganized the pantry the way she liked it, even though it made no sense. I was trying. Meanwhile, my business was blooming. The travel platform I'd launched quietly from my bedroom in El Paso was evolving. I'd hired 2 part-time assistants, then 4, then a remote tech team to handle the back end. I started landing corporate clients, law firms, nonprofits, even a few celebrities who wanted discreet, luxury travel plans with bilingual support. Revenue soared. I remember the first time I saw my dashboard cross the $1 million mark. I stared at the screen in disbelief, the numbers glowing back like a secret I wasn't allowed to say out loud. Because at home, I was still just Brandon's wife. Evelyn didn't care about the business. When she saw me on Zoom with a client, she'd mutter, "Playing on the computer again?" Or worse, "Are you still pretending that's a job?" Every time she said it, I felt 14 years old again. Awkward, unsure, desperate to prove I belonged. Brandon would laugh it off. "She's just teasing. You know how she is." But I knew better. Evelyn didn't tease. She measured. She devalued. And most of all, she didn't forget. One evening, after a 12-hour day juggling client calls, supplier contracts, and cleaning her antique silverware for an upcoming brunch, I collapsed on the couch. Evelyn walked in, stared at the cushions I'd disturbed, and said flatly, "We don't lounge on that." I stood up, nodded, went to our room, and cried in silence while Brandon played video games with his headset on. He never asked why I was quiet anymore. 3 months into living with them, Evelyn made an announcement over dinner, while pouring herself a second glass of wine. "Brandon and I are planning a trip to Italy," she said, swirling her glass. I blinked. "Oh, that sounds lovely." She smiled. "It will be. Of course, someone needs to stay behind. Keep the house in order. Mind the deliveries. Water the orchids." Her eyes landed on me like a target. "You." I waited for Brandon to step in, to say it was a misunderstanding, to explain that I was part of the trip, too. He just cleared his throat and said, "It's only 10 days, babe. Mom really wants to see Florence again. It was Dad's favorite." I pushed my plate away. "So, I'm not invited." "It's not like that," he said, already uncomfortable. "You've been tired lately. Maybe some quiet time here would be good." Quiet time. Alone in a house with a woman who measured my worth in coasters and curtain folds. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan, counting its rotations like heartbeats. I couldn't tell what hurt more, the exclusion, or the fact that Brandon didn't even see it as wrong. When I brought it up again the next morning, hoping he'd reconsider, he sighed. "You're being sensitive, Noelle. It's a trip. Stop making everything into a drama." I stared at him, feeling something inside me fracture. This wasn't just about Italy. It was about who I had become in this house. Invisible, unacknowledged, disposable. I wasn't his partner. I was his mother's helper. And I was done pretending it was fine. But I didn't say that. Not yet. I tucked it inside. Let it burn slow. Later that week, over breakfast, I decided to speak directly to Evelyn, to confront the quiet cruelty. I sat down across from her, my voice calm, my hands folded. I wanted to ask, were you planning to exclude me from the trip? Evelyn didn't flinch. She took a sip of tea and smiled thinly. If you wanted to come, you could have said so. No need for theatrics. I'm not being theatrical, I said softly. I just want to understand. Brandon walked in mid-sentence, setting down a bag of groceries. What's going on? Your wife is having another outburst, Evelyn said smoothly. I turned to him. Brandon, do you think it's fair I was never included? He looked between us. Can we not do this right now? And then Evelyn leaned forward, her voice suddenly cold and sharp. Honestly, Noelle, do you really think you belong in Florence? That's a trip for people who understand art, history, sophistication, not people who think typing on a laptop equals success. Let's be honest, you're not exactly a woman of substance. My heart stilled. The words landed like stones, each one heavier than the last. And Brandon said nothing. That silence, that was the moment I knew. Something was going to break. And it wasn't going to be me. The next morning, I didn't get up early to mop the kitchen floor. I didn't brew Evelyn's preferred tea or wipe down her crystal figurines. I sat at the dining table, laptop open, sipping my own coffee. Bold, black, unapologetic. Evelyn entered wearing her silk robe and a look of quiet offense. Her eyes lingered on the untouched countertop like it was a personal insult. Brandon joined moments later, scrolling on his phone, oblivious to the storm building in the room. I waited until we were all seated, the air tight with silence. Then I closed my laptop and looked Evelyn straight in the eye. Let's not dance around this anymore, I said. You don't want me to come to Italy. You've made that clear. Evelyn didn't blink. I simply assumed you had responsibilities here. I held her gaze. You mean cleaning your silverware? Brandon looked up, frowning. Noelle, don't start. I turned to him. You didn't stand up for me. Not once. You let her talk down to me day after day. Do you even realize how that feels? He sighed. She's just opinionated. That's who she is. No. She's cruel, I said flatly. And you? You're complicit. Evelyn set down her fork with a delicate clink. Maybe this arrangement isn't working anymore. If you're this unhappy, perhaps it's time you reconsider your place here. My voice dropped. My place. She leaned forward, her tone like frost. You're not family, Noelle. You're a charity case Brandon brought home. No degree, no refinement. Pretending your little laptop hobby makes you accomplished. You're a leech. The word echoed. Brandon's fork froze midair. But still he said nothing. That was all I needed. I stood slowly, pushing my chair back. My heart thudded hard, but my face was calm. Fine, I said. I'll leave. Brandon finally looked up. Wait, what? I'm done, I said. With all of this. I walked to the bedroom, grabbed my duffel, and packed only what I needed. My laptop, my passport, a few clothes. I left the rest, the designer handbag Evelyn had mocked, the gifts Brandon never understood, the framed photo of our wedding day that no longer felt real. At the door, Evelyn watched me with arms crossed. You'll be back, she said. Life's expensive out there. You'll learn that. I paused. No, Evelyn, you will. And I left. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry in the driveway. I just walked to my car, started the engine, and drove to nowhere, to everywhere. The moment the house disappeared from my rearview mirror, the weight lifted from my chest like a fever breaking. They thought I was leaving with nothing, that I was the one who needed them. They had no idea what I'd built. 3 months passed. I moved into a short-term rental near Santa Cruz. Quiet, sunny, private. I rebuilt my routines, expanded my client base, launched a new version of the platform that offered curated cultural experiences led by locals across Latin America and Europe. Revenue spiked. My tech team grew. We hit $10 million. then $25, then $50. By the time we hit $75 million in total valuation, I was sitting barefoot on the deck of a villa I now owned in Kauai, watching the Pacific stretch beyond the cliffs like a living postcard. And then my phone rang, an unknown number. I picked up. "Noelle," came Evelyn's voice, sharp and frantic, stripped of its usual superiority. "Something's wrong. The power was shut off. The water bill's overdue. The bank is calling about default notices. What's happening?" I leaned back in my chair, let the ocean breeze roll through my hair. "You mean you didn't know?" I said calmly. "I was the one paying the bills, Evelyn. The mortgage, the utilities, even the subscriptions you think magically appeared on your TV." She went silent, then in a stunned whisper, "Brandon said he was covering everything with his job at the resort." I let out a small laugh. "Brandon makes $42,000 a year. Your wine bill alone was double that." She was breathing hard now. "But you didn't say anything. Why didn't you tell us?" "Would it have mattered?" I asked. "You didn't care when I was working 16-hour days. You just saw someone beneath you, someone to command." There was a pause, then a whisper. "Can you fix it?" I didn't answer right away. I could hear the desperation, the cracks in her pride, the very thing she'd used to measure everyone else, now crumbling. Brandon's voice came next, muffled and weak. "Noelle, please. You're my wife. We're family." I closed my eyes. "Not anymore, Brandon. This call, it's international. You'll see the charges." Click. The line went dead. A week later, I flew back to California, not for them, but for closure. I had booked a meeting at a law office in Santa Barbara. Neutral ground, clean exit, no more blurred lines. Brandon arrived late. He looked different, hollow, hair unkempt, a suit jacket that hung off his shoulders like he didn't remember how it was supposed to fit. The moment he walked in, he avoided my eyes, like even his guilt had too much pride to meet me. He sat down across the table, folding his hands, fidgeting. "Noelle," he started, but the words faltered. I didn't speak, just slid the manila folder toward him. Inside were the finalized divorce papers, asset divisions, legal closures, all clean, all fair. "You were supposed to pay for Italy," he mumbled, almost to himself. "That's what she said. Mom thought you'd already booked everything." I stared at him. "You both assumed I'd fund your vacation while you insulted me in my own home." He flinched. "It wasn't like that, wasn't it?" I asked. "You watched her tear me apart for not having a degree, for working online, for not being cultured enough, while I paid your mortgage." He opened his mouth, closed it, swallowed hard. "I didn't know it was all you. You never asked." That shut him down. The silence stretched. Thick, final. He signed the papers with trembling fingers, and when he handed them back, he whispered, "Do you hate me?" I didn't answer right away. "I don't hate you, Brandon," I said finally. "I pity you, because even now, you still don't see what you lost." I stood, adjusted my bag, reached for the door. His voice stopped me. "Are you going to help us?" he asked. I turned. "I did," I said, calm and sharp. "I helped you live above your means. I helped your mother feel like a queen. I helped both of you forget what survival looks like." I walked out, not needing to slam the door. The weight of my absence would hit harder than noise ever could. By the time I reached the elevator, I felt at peace. A rare, earned kind of peace. Later that week, my attorney sent confirmation that the divorce had been recorded. Brandon and Evelyn would now be responsible for the house, the taxes, the utilities, the debts racked up under Evelyn's spree of designer purses and imported wine. Over $440,000 in debt. I could have helped, could have erased it with a few keystrokes. I had the means, but I also had boundaries. They called me a leech while bleeding me dry. No more. I heard through an old neighbor that Evelyn had taken a job as a showroom assistant at a local boutique. Brandon picked up a second shift at the resort, working late nights now. I didn't rejoice in their struggle, but I also didn't save them from it. Let them learn. Let them rebuild. Or not. Meanwhile, I flew back to Kauai, where my house waited like an open palm. Solid, serene mine. My mother, Rosa, had just finished unpacking her final suitcase. She walked through the open kitchen in awe, fingertips grazing the granite counters like they weren't real. "Noelle," she whispered. "You did this." "You did," I replied. "You planted the dream. I just followed it." We sat on the lanai that night, watching the sky melt into coral and gold. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and for the first time since I was a child, I felt safe in the world I'd created. No tension, no pretending, no walking on eggshells. Just waves, wind, and freedom. A few days later, I got a message from Marisol Rivera. "Are you in Kauai too? Just bought a place down the coast. We need to catch up. I owe you a margarita." I smiled so wide I startled my dog. We met for lunch the next afternoon. Two women who used to split lunch tacos, now talking about contracts, business scaling, investor meetings. Marisol was now a CEO of a global event planning firm, with clients across Europe and Asia. She'd brought her parents to live with her, too, same as I had. That night, she toasted over the fire pit. To every girl who was underestimated and every woman who turned that into a superpower. We clinked glasses. Later, she told me Evelyn had posted on Facebook about struggles and how some people walk away when times get tough. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I had already spoken the loudest way I knew how, by living. It's strange, isn't it? The way some of the most painful endings turn out to be the cleanest beginnings. Every so often, I still get emails forwarded from the old family account, overdue statements, final notices, a desperate promo for some debt consolidation miracle. Evelyn probably clicked on by accident. I don't open them. I just forward them to their new billing address and go back to sipping my pineapple juice by the ocean. There's a new rhythm to my days now. In the morning, I walk along the cliffs, barefoot in the cool sand, thinking of how far I've come from the streets of El Paso. I check in with my teams, 47 employees across 8 countries, all remote, all thriving. I write newsletters for my clients, sharing insider tips for hidden markets in Oaxaca or sustainable eco-resorts in Patagonia. At night, I cook dinner with my mom. She hums when she stirs, like she used to when I was 5. Sometimes we dance in the kitchen, just because. She's rested now, radiant. She no longer smells like grease and exhaustion. She smells like hibiscus oil and roasted garlic. And me? I've never been more myself. I no longer try to shrink to fit someone else's mold. I no longer second-guess whether my work counts as real just because it happens on a screen. I no longer need someone's son to validate my womanhood or someone's mother to sign off on my worth. That part of my life is over. But I'm not bitter. I'm grateful. Because if Evelyn hadn't tried to break me, I might never have discovered just how unbreakable I am. I might never have drawn a line and said, enough. I might still be standing in that house, folding linens for someone who called me worthless, quietly bleeding money into a life that never gave anything back. Instead, I walked away, and everything changed. Marisol and I now host monthly dinners, sometimes on her deck, sometimes on mine. Our moms sit side by side, sharing stories, laughing like sisters. We talk business, of course, but we also talk healing. The quiet, slow kind. The kind no one sees. The kind that doesn't go viral. Recently, Marisol looked over at me during one of those nights and said, "Remember when we used to joke about running away to Spain?" "I don't think we were joking," I said. She smiled. "Then what are we waiting for?" So yes, a Spain branch might be coming. Why not? When I think of everything I've been called, uneducated, undeserving, dramatic, ungrateful, I smile now. Because none of it stuck. You see, when you know who you are, the noise fades. The shame slides off. The names lose their sting. All that remains is your truth. And here's mine. I made a life from nothing. I built a business in silence while they laughed at me. I gave freely, generously, lovingly, and was discarded like I didn't matter. But I do matter. And so do you. To the woman watching this who's been overlooked, underestimated, talked down to, you are not small. You are not invisible. You are not less than just because they couldn't see your value. Sometimes the greatest power you can claim is to walk away, not in anger, but in clarity. Not to destroy them, but to save yourself. To choose peace over performance. To stop watering deserts and start planting in places where you can bloom. I hope my story reminded you that it's never too late to rewrite the narrative. That being called a lowlife by someone who never lifted you might just be the best blessing in disguise. So go, build the life, chase the dream, make the money, take your mama to Hawaii. And when they come crawling back, looking for the woman they once dismissed, smile and let the waves answer for you. Thank you for being here. If my journey resonated with you, if you've walked through heartbreak, betrayal, or quiet triumph, hit subscribe. Join me. We're not just surviving anymore. We're rising. Together. I saw it before anyone said a word. The place card at the end of the table, handwritten in a rushed, messy scrawl. It didn't say my name. It didn't say Mara. It said needs assistance. Just that. 2 words. A label. A box. A placeholder. As if I were a malfunctioning object in the middle of an otherwise curated event. For a few seconds, I thought it had to be a mistake. Someone mixed up the cards. Someone forgot to print mine. Someone, except deep down I knew better. You don't put a card that vague in gold cursive beside the patio exit by accident. It wasn't just careless. It was deliberate. They wanted me out of the photo line, out of the spotlight, out of the picture entirely. The air inside the rehearsal dinner smelled like eucalyptus and wine. The venue, a minimalist chic rooftop loft in downtown Portland, was all glass and gloss and gold-toned lighting, the kind of place meant to look timeless in wedding albums. A woman with a clipboard smiled at me as I wheeled in, her eyes flicking down to the chair and darting away. I nodded politely and kept moving. Everyone else had place cards with their names printed in a classy serif font, tucked into little holders shaped like olive leaves. My sister Sierra's was centered at the table, naturally next to Grant's, and their names gleamed like magazine covers. My mom Denise was down the table beside an aunt. My father, somewhere in the shadows near the planner, exactly where he always ended up. But me? I was an afterthought, and even that felt generous. I didn't touch the card, didn't flip it over. I just turned my chair slowly, backed away from the table, and parked myself against the far wall beside a cluster of coat racks and empty champagne flutes. The noise of the room blurred into one sound. Glasses clinking, heels tapping, laughter that didn't belong to me. Then I saw my mother emerge from the kitchen, cheeks flushed with Chardonnay and purpose. I raised my voice just enough to catch her attention. Mom, can I talk to you for a second? She blinked like I'd broken a spell. Of course, honey, she said, but her smile stretched thin across her face like she already wanted the moment to be over. I gestured toward the hallway and she followed me out reluctantly, clutching her glass like it was her lifeline. They didn't put my name on the card, I said. It just says needs assistance. She blinked, then sighed. Mara, I'm sure it wasn't meant that way. Don't make this into something it's not, okay? Just go with the flow. It's Sierra's day. Her words landed like stones in my stomach. I opened my mouth to reply, but she was already walking back into the dining room, heels clicking with conviction. I stayed in the hallway, not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I knew no one was listening anyway. It wasn't just about the place card. Not really. It was about the accumulation, the slow erosion of personhood under the guise of politeness. The times I'd been wheeled to the far end of the dinner table, left off the family slideshow, cropped out of Christmas cards. The way my name was replaced with labels. Brave. Inspiring. Such a trooper. Never just Mara. Never just me. Inside the dining room, the lights shimmered over polished glassware and perfectly folded napkins. The wedding planner called out times and sequences in a clipped, rehearsed voice. I rolled forward a few inches just to see better. And a cousin, I think his name was Aaron, glanced at me, then leaned over to whisper something. Is she with catering? The words were quiet, but not enough. Not enough to spare me. Not enough to spare him. I didn't say anything. I didn't flinch. But something inside me shifted. Just slightly, just enough. My seat wasn't at the table. Not emotionally. Not symbolically. And apparently not even physically. They didn't forget me. They just excluded me. Quietly. Gently. Politely. And somehow that hurt more. I backed away from the room again. Wheeled into the restroom. Not because I needed it, but because it was the only place I could breathe. The mirror above the sink was too clean. Too honest. My face looked pale under the LED lights, and my shoulders had curled inward without me realizing. I looked like I was trying to disappear. I pressed my hands to the edge of the counter. The wood was cool, steady, real. Then I pulled out my phone. Notes app. New entry. April 21st rehearsal dinner. Place card said needs assistance. Not my name. Not a mistake. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. Then I added, this wasn't the first time, but it will be the last time I let it happen in silence. And I hit save. The next day, the clouds over Portland hung low, like someone had pulled a damp, gray blanket across the sky. It matched the weight in my chest. Mom, Denise, insisted I ride along for one more venue visit. Final, floral adjustments, she said brightly, as if centerpieces were enough to cover everything else. I didn't argue, not because I wanted to be there, but because something in me needed to return, like a book that had skipped a chapter and wouldn't let me move on until I read it right. When we arrived, Sierra was already inside, leaning against the marble bar like she owned the place. The venue was quiet, half-decorated. Tables draped in white linen waited for attention, and the air smelled faintly of lavender and starch. I stayed near the wall, keeping my wheels silent against the floor, drifting past the tall potted plants that lined the hallway like sentries. Then I heard it. Sierra's voice, bright and casual, tossed over her shoulder like it meant nothing. Just make sure that wheelchair girl doesn't block the aisle tomorrow, she said. She wasn't whispering. She wasn't hiding. And she wasn't joking. The planner nodded, pen poised, ready to log my body as a logistical hazard. I didn't gasp. I didn't cry. I just stared at the smooth tile and clenched the rim of my wheel hard enough to press into my palm. That wheelchair girl. Not Mara. Not my sister. Just an object. An obstruction. A flower pot to move. A line item to rearrange. They didn't know I was there. Or maybe worse, they did. I backed away from the planter and rolled into the nearest restroom. Again, not because I needed to be there, but because it was the only door I could close that didn't echo. Inside, I sat still under the artificial glow, my reflection staring back with tired eyes and a fading sense of shape. I looked, not sick, not broken, just tired in that specific way your soul gets when it's been ignored too long. I pulled out my phone again. Notes app. Thumb to screen. April 22nd, that wheelchair girl. Sierra to planner. Purpose. To hide me from ceremony photos. I hit save. This wasn't just a detail now. It was a pattern, a timeline, a record of erasure. And if they weren't going to remember what they said, I would. Later that night, when we got home, Denise disappeared upstairs without a word. No offer to talk. No questions. No eye contact. I wheeled into the living room, greeted by the faint vanilla scent of a candle she forgot to blow out. The house didn't ask me how it went. It never did. But something tugged at me, a thread of habit maybe, or just memory that wouldn't leave me alone. I rolled down the hallway past where family photos used to line the walls. Then I stopped, backed up. The framed drawing was gone. When I was 11, I sketched a picture of Sierra and me standing under the red maple tree in Aunt Claire's backyard. Sierra in a long dress, me in jeans, holding hands. We were both smiling. She'd loved it, framed it herself, said it made her heart soft. That sketch had hung in that hallway for 6 years. Now it was gone. I checked the drawer under the console table. Carefully, quietly. There, beneath a stack of junk mail and 2 expired coupons, I found it. Face down. The glass had a tiny crack in one corner. The backing was dusty, but the drawing was intact. Still mine. Still us. I sat with it for a while under the lamplight in my room, studying every pencil line from the version of me that still believed in shared stories. The version of me who thought a drawing could claim a place on a wall. And in a family. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just opened my journal and turned to a blank page. At the top, I wrote, things they took without asking. First entry, my drawing. Second, my design. Third, my place. And under that, in smaller letters, I underlined twice, my voice. The next morning, I watched as Sierra posted a story on Instagram, boomerang of her and Tessa clinking glasses captioned, "Finally the perfect bridal squad." Everyone tagged, everyone grinning, everyone but me. I wasn't even in the background, cropped entirely, and the worst part wasn't being excluded. It was knowing they knew I'd see it, and they did it anyway. I didn't react. No comment, no reply, just sat there with that old ache returning, not sharp anymore, but familiar, like a bruise you stop touching because the pain had become part of the skin. I closed the app and leaned back, the drawing still visible on my bookshelf. My fingers reached for the pencil, but I didn't sketch. Not yet. That would come later. Right now, I had one more thing to add to my list. April 23rd Instagram post. Bridal squad. Cropped out. And below it, not forgotten. Just removed. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was upset, at least not in the way most people mean when they say that. It wasn't anger keeping me awake or tears. It was the clarity. That sharp, painful clarity that settles in when you've stopped trying to justify someone else's behavior and finally start naming it for what it is. They hadn't just excluded me. They'd rewritten the story entirely, and I'd helped write it. I'd forgotten about the folder buried in the documents drive on my laptop, but now I opened it. C+S wedding design. Inside, dozens of drafts, color palettes, layout sketches, digital illustrations, even a floral motif I'd created one afternoon while sipping tea in Aunt Claire's kitchen. Sierra had loved it. "It's so grand," she'd said. "The botanical garden vibes, the rose gold, it all just fits." She never asked where it came from. She just assumed her name made it hers. I pulled up the final mock-up, the one she printed on vellum paper, layered with that fancy embossed monogram. It was identical, not inspired by, not altered, just copied. No credit, no thank you, no mention. At first, I'd been thrilled to help. She'd made it feel special. "You've got such an eye," she'd said, looping an arm around my shoulders in that loose, distracted way she did when she wanted something. "It'll feel more personal if it comes from you." And I believed her. I let myself believe I was included, that my name might not be on the dress or in the bridal party, but it would be in the details, in the things I made. I should have known better. Later that morning, while the rest of the house stirred to the soft sounds of wedding countdowns and curling irons, I opened Instagram again. This time, Sierra had posted a flat lay of the invitation suite. The caption read, "Huge thanks to my incredible designer friend Olivia for the layout. Absolute perfection. Designer friend Olivia. Not a sister. Not me." I stared at the post long enough for my phone to dim. Then I scrolled back through our texts, trying to find any trace of acknowledgement. There was none. Just a few logistics about fonts, a thumbs-up emoji when I sent over the final PDF. That was it. I checked the family group chat. Still muted. Still overflowing with excitement I wasn't part of. I searched Mara just to be sure. One result from a week ago. My suggestion about the slideshow music. Tessa had replied with a sticker, a cartoon eye roll. No one defended me. No one responded. No one cared. I didn't say anything to Denise. I didn't say anything to anyone. I just opened my journal again and flipped to the list. Added a few more lines under things they took without asking. My invitations. My slideshow. My ideas. My name. Then, after a long pause, I added my voice. That afternoon, I wheeled into the sunroom, hoping for quiet, and found Dad sitting by the window with his newspaper folded in his lap. He looked up, eyes soft, distant. "You doing okay?" he asked. I nodded. Just needed air. He didn't press. He never did. But something about the way he watched me lingered, like he wanted to say more but had run out of chances. I almost asked if he knew about the place card, about the Instagram posts, about Olivia. But I didn't. I just sat beside him for a while, the kind of silence that didn't fix anything, but didn't make it worse. By evening, the group chat lit up again. Sierra, final run-through at the vineyard tomorrow. Bridesmaids, be there by noon. Can't wait for one last magical moment before the big day. There were hearts, glitter emojis, replies from every bridesmaid. Except me. I wasn't even listed. Even though I'd built the slideshow they were rehearsing. Even though the timing of the music, the transitions between photos, the last quote at the end. Love doesn't make you whole. It reminds you you already were. Had all come from me, even though it was mine. I didn't respond. I didn't scroll. I closed the app and pulled out a blank sheet of sketch paper. Not for them. Not for the wedding. Just for me. I drew slowly, deliberately. A window. A chair. Light coming in sideways. A scene with no people in it. Just space. Just air. Just a place where someone could exist without being rearranged. I didn't sign it. Not yet. I wanted to sit with it first. I looked back at the list in my journal. At the bottom of the page, I wrote one more line. They wanted my talent, not my presence. Then I underlined it. Twice. I didn't plan it as revenge. That's important to say, even if no one believes me. It wasn't some grand scheme with a dramatic ending. There were no fireworks waiting in the wings. No exposé. Just paper. Just ink. Just things they thought I'd forgotten to hold on to. The morning of the wedding rehearsal, while the house bustled with curling irons and mimosa pitchers, I sat at my desk and began collecting. Not emotions, not pain, but proof. My sketch drafts. Screenshots from the group chat. Photos of the invitation sweet Sierra had printed without asking. Even the Instagram post thanking Olivia. And finally, the drawing from the hallway, the one of me and Sierra under the red maple tree. I'd cleaned the cracked frame the night before, wiping the dust off like it mattered. I placed everything into a plain white box. No ribbon, no card, no return address. At the very top, on a sheet of off-white cardstock, I wrote in black ink, from the one you tried to edit out. Then, carefully taped to the bottom right corner of the card, I placed a QR code, simple, clean, unbranded. When scanned, it would lead to a private video hosted on an unlisted link. No comments, no likes, no sharing, just me, my voice, my face, sitting at the same desk, filmed the night before in a single take. I didn't wear makeup. I didn't write a script. I didn't cry. I looked directly at the camera and said, "Hi, you don't have to watch this. But if you do, just know I'm not here to ruin anything. I'm just here to be remembered." Then I listed it all. The design, the slideshow, the seating, the silence. And I ended with, "You don't have to say my name, but you don't get to erase it either." It wasn't a grenade. It was a mirror. And I was done waiting for someone else to hold it up. At 8:46 a.m., I called the courier service. At 9:02, the box was picked up from my front steps. By noon, it was delivered, addressed simply to Sierra Ellison, care of the vineyard at Street Clare. I didn't go to the venue that day. Denise didn't ask me to come. Sierra didn't text. Tessa hadn't spoken to me in 3 days. Aunt Claire had sent a thumbs up to a brunch photo and nothing else. And I was fine with that. Instead, I stayed home and watched the live stream. It was muted. I didn't need to hear Sierra's vows to know what they sounded like. Pinterest perfect, checked for tone and phrasing. Nothing out of place. She wore a dress that shimmered like apology, though I knew it wasn't one. The guests clapped on cue. The officiant smiled. The bridesmaids beamed. But something about the frame felt brittle, like a picture printed too many times, losing clarity with every copy. Then, just after cocktail hour began, I saw it. On the live stream, between shots of the reception lawn and the champagne station, the planner placed a white box onto the gift table, neatly like it belonged there. I didn't blink. I just watched. Sierra reached for it sometime between her second toast and third glass of Prosecco. Tessa stood beside her, laughing unaware. Then Sierra read the name. Then she opened the box. She pulled out the stack of prints first, the slide mock-ups, the invitation overlays, the photos from the family album I'd formatted for her montage, all labeled with the original file names, the creation dates. Then the drawing. 2 girls under a tree. Hands joined. Faces blank. She stared at it. Tessa leaned in. Then the note. Her lips moved. She read it. Then flipped the cardstock over. The QR code stared back. She scanned it, and the video began. I couldn't hear it, but I didn't need to. I could see it in their faces. Tessa stepped back like she'd touched something hot. The planner hovered nearby, unsure. An uncle cleared his throat. A cousin glanced away. And Denise, standing near the bar with a flute in hand, froze mid-sip. No one said a word. Not right away. But something shifted, visibly, irrevocably. Sierra didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just walked away. No shoes, no explanation. Her dress dragging across the stone walkway like it didn't quite belong to her anymore. The music stumbled. The DJ adjusted the volume. The party tried to recover, but it had cracked, not collapsed, just cracked. And from the quiet of my bedroom, I watched it all, not with triumph, not with satisfaction, but with a strange, unfamiliar calm. Not because I ruined something, but because for the first time I had made myself visible. I didn't expect silence to feel so loud. The day after the wedding, the house was still. Not peaceful, just still, like the air itself was holding its breath. No texts, no calls, no knocks on my door. Even the group chat had gone quiet, 48 hours without a single ping. No photos of leftover cake, no jokes, no emojis, just digital dust settling where noise used to be. At 9:47 a.m., my phone lit up. Celine liked your video. No comment, no message, just a single act of acknowledgement from the one person who had always watched from the edges. I stared at the notification for a long time before swiping it away. Not because I didn't care, but because it was enough. Small, but enough. That afternoon, while rearranging a few books on the shelf, I heard Denise's voice drift in from the kitchen. "Do you want to come eat?" No nickname, no softened tone, just a question. I didn't answer right away. I waited, counted 3 slow seconds. She didn't repeat it. I rolled into the hallway and paused at the edge of the doorway. She was setting the table. Her plate, a second one. No names assigned. No performance. Just 2 places. "I'm not hungry," I said, voice steady. She looked over her shoulder. Eyes unreadable. Then nodded once. Okay. That was all. But something shifted. Not in a cinematic, heart-stopping way. Just slightly. Like the first time you realize winter is leaving. Not warmth, but not cold anymore either. Later that evening, while the street outside buzzed with weekend traffic and porch lights flickered on one by one, my phone lit up again. "Tessa, I didn't know it was that bad. I'm sorry if I hurt you." 12 words. No punctuation. No emoji. Just silence, wrapped in syllables. I read it once. Then again. Then deleted it. Not out of spite. Not out of anger. I just didn't need it. That version of the story, the one where I waited for someone else to make space for me, it was done. That obligation to smooth things over, to make everyone feel better, it wasn't mine to carry anymore. The group chat remained silent. Hours later, someone named Mia dropped a message. Are we still doing dinner next week? No one replied. I didn't either. Instead, I opened my sketchbook, not the one for assignments or commissions, the one I'd been afraid to touch since the wedding. I didn't draw the venue, or the dress, or the centerpieces. I drew what it could have been: a garden, a chair, a long table with no head, a dress that flowed but didn't pretend, and me not cropped out, not turned away, centered, visible, not for them, for me. I added the smallest detail last: my chair. But this time it wasn't a device. It was a throne. Not grand, not dramatic, but solid, unapologetic, occupying space. Then I added my face, full, finished, eyes forward, and in the bottom right corner, I signed my name. Not initials, not a watermark. Mara Ellison. Clear, bold, legible. I didn't send it to anyone, didn't post it, didn't explain it. I let it sit on the desk, open, lit by the gold glow of early evening. 3 weeks passed. The sky in Portland began shifting into early summer. Softer evenings, air that smelled like warm pavement and distant blossoms. The city kept moving, and so did I. One morning, I opened my laptop and clicked on the tab I'd left untouched for months. College Application School of Visual Arts Portfolio Submission. My file was ready. Dozens of pieces pulled from late nights, quiet hurts, slow rebuilds. The final upload, a digital collage titled Uninvited Unfolding. No caption, no justification, just my name. I hovered over the button, then clicked. The screen didn't explode. My heart didn't race. I just breathed, and for the first time in a long while it felt like enough. That afternoon, Dad showed up with 2 iced coffees and a brown paper bag of bagels. He didn't knock, just nudged the door open like he always had. Thought we could walk, he said. We didn't talk much during the first half-mile. The trail curved around a lake framed by tall trees and birdsong. Eventually, we sat on a bench under a wide maple. He took a sip from his cup, then looked out across the water. If speaking up made you lose them, he said, they were never really yours to begin with. I didn't answer right away, but I knew what he meant. He wasn't talking about Sierra, or Tessa, or even Denise. He meant all of it. All the years I'd been taught to take up less space, to be grateful, to stay quiet, and I had, until I didn't. When we got home, a letter was waiting in the mailbox. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. Inside was a card. You taught me how to see again. Love, Claire. Taped below was a miniature sketch. Me, in my chair, laughing, not posed, not performing, just living. I placed it on my desk, beside the drawing of the throne. A reminder that not all silence is absence. And not every ending needs to be loud. They started a story without me, but I rewrote the ending anyway. Not to hurt them, not to prove them wrong, but to make sure I didn't disappear from my own pages. They may have worn the dresses, given the toasts, held the mic, but I held the mirror, and sometimes that's the loudest thing in the room.